Don't you hate it when people pronounce things we're wrong? Isn't it just so annoying? Oh, and of course, people pronouncing your own name wrong. Don't you just hate that? But yet, on TV, on the radio, things that people see and hear every day, so many of us are pronouncing Māori names and words completely wrong. Too many of us. An official and the Indigenous language of our country being pronounced completely wrong on an everyday basis. I go to Kapiti College. Let's go to Raumati. In the holidays I went to Taupo. It is happening everywhere. It is something very important that needs to be changed. The Māori language is a huge part of our heritage and is an official language of our country, along with English and sign language. Culture is priceless, and it is something that should be embraced, and something that we, as a country, should be proud of. But is that what we are doing? Unless you count pronouncing Māori words completely wrong and making no effort to try and pronounce them correctly, then no. It is very important that we all make an effort to, at the absolute least, pronounce the words of our official language correctly. Now, I have tried telling people how Te Reo words are supposed to be pronounced, but I am met with replies like, "It's not part of my culture because my granddad was from a different country," or "It's the Pākehā way of saying it," or "You don't know how to pronounce that because you're white." Actually, there is no Pākehā way of saying Māori words, and if I can't speak Māori correctly because I am not Māori, does that mean Americans can't speak English properly because they are not English? It is not that hard to learn a little bit of the Māori language and find out how to pronounce the words correctly, and people can learn just by listening. Now, I'm no expert in this, and I don't claim to be, and I know I don't always get it right, but I give it a go and I'm willing to learn, and that is what counts. We already use most of the Māori syllables in our everyday speech. The ka from Kapiti sounds like the car we drive. The ro from Raumati sounds like rowing a boat. We don't even use rau that often in our daily speech. The only word I could think of was round, whereas we use row for rowing, rotary, roam, road, rope, the list goes on. You almost have to try to say it incorrectly. All that is required to pronounce words correctly is a little bit of effort. That little bit of effort is a crucial part of preserving the language of our Indigenous culture, something that, if it dies out, unlike English, is irreplaceable, because no other countries speak Te Reo Māori. And it is part of all New Zealanders' culture, even if you are originally from a different country. You live in this country, and therefore should be proud of your country's heritage, and you should try and preserve it. And if we lose the language, the pillar of tradition, the whole culture will be weakened, and a whole lot of history and knowledge will be lost with the language. The Māori language and culture is integral to our national identity, and our beautiful Indigenous culture is at risk of being lost forever. We don't want to end up like Australia. There used to be over 500 Aboriginal languages in Australia, but now only 70 remain, with speaking numbers dropping very quickly. The wonderful Australian Aboriginal culture is disappearing. We cannot let that happen in our country. The amount of Māori-speaking people in our country is already starting to decline. Only 4% of New Zealanders can speak fluent Māori, and 84% of those are of Māori ethnicity. The percentage of Māori who can speak the language dropped by 1% between 2001 and 2006. It may seem like a small amount, but we should take action immediately, because otherwise we will realise what is happening too late. But what is the lasting solution to this problem? I was taught Te Reo Māori at Paikakariki Primary School once a week, and all students did ka pāka. This has helped me so much, and it is a skill that I'll carry throughout my life. I noticed that my friends who pronounced Māori words incorrectly had no Māori classes at primary school. This means they have very limited knowledge of the Māori language, and they also struggle to see the importance of it. I think that one way to get people to start speaking more Te Reo is to teach it at primary school. Kids are eager to learn at this age, and it will become second nature for them to pronounce words correctly if they are taught at primary school. So I propose this. It is compulsory for kids to have at least an hour of learning Te Reo Māori per week, and all teachers have a basic knowledge of the language as well. To be honest, this isn't much, but it could just give people enough knowledge of the language to help preserve it. I think each school child should have a knowledge of at least 150 Māori words by the time they leave primary school, so they can hold a basic conversation in New Zealand's Indigenous language. So, why do people pronounce these words incorrectly? It could be down to lack of education, as I mentioned before, but it could also be that people are almost afraid to try because they're scared of making a fool of themselves, and so they just follow everyone else, pronouncing them wrong. This is something we really need to work on. Is it really that bad if you pronounce a Māori word slightly wrong, when everyone else is already pronouncing them even more incorrectly? What matters is that you are trying, and that creates an atmosphere where others will feel okay to try as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, people hate English being pronounced incorrectly, especially their names. But yet, is it fine for people to go around pronouncing Māori names incorrectly? Treat others how you would like to be treated. If you expect someone to pronounce your name correctly, no matter how simple your name is, then you should be able to pronounce Māori names correctly. And if you can't, then you should learn. If anything, it should be the other way around. People with names from our Indigenous culture should be the ones who are pronounced correctly all the time. It shows how bad this problem really is. We are falling away from our country's roots, culture and tradition. I've heard stories from right here at Kapiti College of people with Māori names who have classmates who always incorrectly pronounce their name. Is it because it is too hard to pronounce, or simply because they just can't be bothered trying? How is this fair? We as a country pride ourselves on being a fair society, but are we really? When we can't even pronounce our Indigenous people's names right? This issue isn't even about learning Te Reo, it is basic respect, and people have a right to be respected. Only when the last word has been spoken, the last tradition has disappeared, and the Western world has taken over, only then will we realise culture is irreplaceable. Now, I would like to leave everyone watching this with a wero, a challenge. Give pronouncing Māori words correctly a go. Don't just be a sheep and stick with the crowd. Let's be Kapiti College, not Kapiti College. You could start off a chain that helps preserve our wonderful culture and even encourages it to grow. Thank you.